Creative Babble.
Criminal Conduct Season 5 is available right now. You can binge the entire series on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. Hey guys, it's me, Javier. A lot of you are new here and may not even realize that I host two other true crime podcasts, The Ponzi Playbook and Criminal Conduct. Now, it's been a long time since we've released a new season of Criminal Conduct, and that's because it usually takes about a year to produce. It's a really intense podcast. But finally, Season 5 is ready, and we are going to play the brand new episode of Season 5. There are 6 episodes total. You can find the episodes on the Criminal Conduct feed, so go ahead and subscribe while you're listening to this. Or if you are really impatient and want to listen to all the episodes right now, join Patreon or listen on Pretend Plus on Apple Podcast. I'll have a link in the show notes. But this is a really cool season. It's truly a mystery. The story takes place in Las Vegas. It has strippers, it has the mafia, it has wrestling. So without further ado, here's the premiere episode of Season 5 of Criminal Conduct.
Buffalo Jim was found dead this weekend here inside a room at this Motel 6. Barrier's nemesis is this man, former Crazy Horse 2 owner Rick Rizzolo, whose club was next door to Barrier's auto repair shop.
Yeah, that's right. On the morning of April 6th of 2008, Jim Barrier, one of Las Vegas's most colorful personalities, was found inside a Motel 6 room. He had white powder on his beard and his pants were around his ankles. He had likely been dead for hours.
Police found an empty bottle on the nightstand, and at first it just seemed like an accidental death, right? Maybe it was an overdose, maybe it was a heart attack. But many people who knew Buffalo Jim immediately suspected foul play.
I believe it's a homicide. I mean, that's how it sums up to be. I mean, he's been getting threat letters in the mail since last November.
This is Jennifer Barrier, Buffalo Jim's daughter, talking to reporters.
I mean, it's pretty obvious Rick Rizzolo got out of jail Friday night, and my dad's killed on Saturday. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Rick Rizzolo was the owner of the Las Vegas Crazy Horse 2 strip club, and who many suspected had ties to organized crime.
For years, Buffalo Jim and Rick Rizzolo were at each other's throats. And to say that these two had a beef is an understatement. You see, these two guys both had separate businesses, but they shared the same building. And it started off as a feud about a few parking spaces. But in February 2003, it ended with an FBI raid and Rick Rizzolo going to federal prison for racketeering and tax evasion. And then, a couple days after Rick Rizzolo being released from house arrest, Buffalo Jim is found dead. Coincidence? Yeah. I'm Javier Leiva with the Pretend Podcast.
And I'm John Taylor with the Twisted Podcast.
And this is Criminal Conduct Season 5, The Life and Death of Buffalo Jim.
And in this season, we dive into the gritty world of Las Vegas, where secrets are buried.
I'm not a bad woman. Could just bury the body, bury the body, bury the body, bury the body, bury the body from me.
Birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, whatever the occasion, it just got a little more personal with meaningful photo gifts from Shutterfly. Add a silly photo to a gold-rimmed mug for your bestie. Put your sweet puppy on a cozy fleece blanket for your teen. Gift your husband a desktop plaque featuring all the kids. Enjoy 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
So we got on the freeway, we were driving towards San Francisco, and Elise called me.
Jennifer Barrier, one of Buffalo Jim's daughters, tells us about the day that her sister Elise called to break the news.
And she said, Jennifer, what are you doing? And I said, I'm driving. She goes, pull over, pull over, pull over. And I pulled over off to the shoulder on the highway, and she said, Jen's dad's dead. I just signed off on the body. I'm at a Motel 6. I don't know what we're going to do. She's like, Dad was set up. We just know he was set up. He had to have been.
Elise tells Jennifer that their father's death was not an accident.
She's like, Jennifer, his car's missing. We have his keys right here, and we don't know where his car is. And I said, did you drive around the parking lot to look for it? She's like, okay, we're going to do that. And I was on the phone with her, and she drove around the parking lot 2 times, and the car was not there.
Buffalo Jim's Rolls Royce was not in the motel parking lot when his daughters arrived to identify the body, but it mysteriously reappeared later that night. Not only that, but prior to his death, Buffalo Jim received a series of anonymous letters and phone calls. Some of them appeared to be warnings, and others seemed more ominous.
These letters my dad received were always typed out in capital letters.
Initially, no one knew of anyone else in the motel room with Buffalo Jim, but police would later learn that there was a female in the room. The letters were no secret. In fact, Buffalo Jim spoke to his daughter Jennifer about them.
Rick just got out of prison. And I'm like, Dad, how do you think they're going to get you? And he said, I think they would do it through a stratagem. They would make it look like I died of a drug overdose in a hotel with women.
This story takes place in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is such a unique place, right? Like, there's almost no place on earth that's equivalent to Las Vegas.
Las Vegas has always had this reputation. When the Hoover Dam was built, they started having all these workers come into that area, and they're away from home, and they needed to entertain them. And so that's where they kind of got the idea that maybe we need like some gambling or something. And so in 1941 was the first casino, I think El Rancho was called. That was kind of the beginning of Vegas. And then you move into all the organized crime and mob with Bugsy Siegel coming in and bringing in the Flamingo, and organized crime came in, full force.
Yeah, when we think of Las Vegas, we think of all the neon signs, we think of the casinos. And even today, if you just walk a couple blocks off the strip, it's a whole different feel, right? There's this other darker side of Las Vegas where you have the smoke-filled casinos and things are a little bit grimy. You got liquor stores, and it's just the contrast from the strip to off-strip is pretty startling.
I think the strip is designed, it's like the facade. And then the rest of Vegas is like what you're not supposed to see.
Yeah.
I think that there was so much vice there. And, Bugsy Siegel was the visionary of Las Vegas. He saw this opportunity to bring all of this out into the desert and start this and take advantage of people's vices. And the organized crime just said, this is a moneymaker. We're going to make so much money and nobody's watching us out here.
Yeah, and part of Las Vegas is not just the mob, it's not just the casinos and all these things that we think about, but it's all these people, these colorful characters that make up the city. And one of those characters is the subject of this season, which is Buffalo Jim Barrier. And he was known around Vegas all the way back to the 80s. This guy, he not only embodied Vegas showmanship, but also the real life drama that comes with Vegas.
I'll tell you, your friend and mine, Buffalo Jim.
You know something, brother?
James Barrier, to me, part of him rolls with Las Vegas because, like you said, he's a showman. But also, he's so anti-Las Vegas because he had so much principle. And he seemed like a guy, he's very complicated. And we're going to try to dig into those layers. But he was a guy that he didn't like people getting away with things. He was a strong believer in justice. We know he was self-made. He dropped out of school, basically when he was a child, and just taught himself how to become a mechanic with the help of his brother. And so Vegas is a place that, being over the top, it doesn't draw attention. It works. It gets attention.
Buffalo Jim did a lot of things, but his core business was auto repair, just working on cars.
Auto and Marine, can I help you? Yeah, just finishing it up. See you at 6 o'clock closing.
He actually opened up this auto repair shop called Allstate Auto and Marine, and it was located in a shopping center in an industrial part of Las Vegas.
All right, so you got your oil change, you got the safety check. The safety check was no charge.
Many people knew him as the owner of this repair shop, but he wasn't just like this mechanic, this auto shop owner in Las Vegas. He was also really involved with the wrestling scene in Las Vegas.
I'm Buffalo Jim with the Buffalo Wrestling Federation. We're going to be
And Buffalo Jim, in the 1990s, he opened and operated this wrestling school called Buffalo's Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, pro wrestling business. Here's my 8-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Body slamming a 300-pound man at my school. See, Buffalo Jim's Pro Wrestling School.
Yeah.
He also did promoting of wrestling, and this wrestling school allowed him to meet a lot of interesting characters.
The Undertaker gave me this here. Sam Kinison, the comedian, gave me this. Muhammad Ali gave me over 900 of his personal items. So that's why I put it up on the walls. It's kind of like a history of my life. But this tells my life. I won Las Vegas's most colorful character.
Here's Bill Anderson, an admirer of Buffalo Jim, who's standing outside of the abandoned Crazy Horse 2 strip club and Buffalo's car repair shop.
Right here is where Jim had a wrestling school and a wrestling promotion right next door to the Gentlemen's Club. Buffalo Jim, who ran his automotive shop right here in this building, who had a lot of run-ins with the owner of this building attached to his.
So Jim Barrier had a pretty interesting neighbor.
And right next to this car mechanic shop, there's this Greek type, what would you say? It's like a Greek revival type building with columns and Greek style lettering. And it's a gentleman's club.
Right. Yeah. It's palace-like looking, but it's just a gentleman's club.
And it's not just a gentleman's club. I mean, this is the gentleman's club, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this is the most popular, has the highest reputation as far as the most sophisticated place to go to see exotic dancers in Las Vegas at the time, the Crazy Horse 2.
The Crazy Horse 2. And this wasn't, like I said, it wasn't just any strip club. I mean, this is where the who's who of Las Vegas and Hollywood and politics, they all went to the Crazy Horse 2 at some point, right?
Right. There were, in the movie Ocean's 11, they shot scenes inside the Crazy Horse 2 and outside.
Here's Bill Anderson again.
This not so nice building here that wreaked havoc on a lot of men's lives. Many of the bouncers here were mob-related goons from Chicago. The Outfit, as they were called, were employed here at this club.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
How did a mechanic and a strip club share the same parking lot? I don't get it.
Well, it is Las Vegas, so I don't think that it's that unusual or surprising to people. I don't think people there were probably shocked by that. But the Crazy Horse 2 opened in 1972, and it had a different owner, a man who they believe had very strong organized crime ties, and that was Tony Albanese. And his head was found in the desert in Las Vegas later, which ended his reign as the owner of this strip club back in the early 1980s. And then a man by the name of Rick Rizzolo took over the club. So Bart bought the club, and then in 1984, his son, Rick Rizzolo, took over kind of the management and running of the club. And that's kind of when the problems started between Jim Barrier and the Crazy Horse 2.
So the Crazy Horse 2 changed ownership a bit, but it didn't really start to shine until Rick Rizzolo got involved. And Rick Rizzolo is a very complicated character here. He's a guy who's known to have very close ties to the mob, but he's also a guy who contributes a lot to politicians' campaigns. So he has a lot of friends in a lot of high places, both on the legal side of the street and on the dark side of the street.
What does it mean to have a connection to organized crime? Does that mean you're a made man? Does it mean you do business with them? That's a pretty nebulous term, but law enforcement over the years has believed and stipulated and stated that they feel that this individual has some association with organized crime. And even if it's not the case, the people around there believed it. So whether it was true or not, people believed that he had connections to organized crime. And I think that is as important as whether or not he actually did.
And maybe that's the genesis of everything we're going to talk about, because here you have this guy, Rick Rizzolo, who's operating this strip club that is highly profitable, is bringing in a lot of traffic. And then next door, you have Buffalo Jim Barrier, who's kind of a stickler for not just the rules, but doing the right thing. And inherently, you have this conflict between these two characters, but their beef goes a lot deeper than just that. And we're going to get into that in just a bit.
So the owner of the Crazy Horse 2 also owns Jim's building. It's the same. So the previous owner, who was Jim's landlord, he and Jim got along. So he gave Jim like a forever lease. Like Jim was going to be there as long as Jim wanted to be, because this guy and Jim got along really well. But when Rick Rizzolo came in, he didn't like that arrangement. And I think that he was somebody who was used to getting his way. And Jim was also somebody who liked to get his way. And those two, I think, came close to butting heads almost immediately once Rick Rizzolo became his landlord. So I think there was a little tension there just from the beginning because of that landlord-tenant relationship, and you had two egos. And my read on this is that I don't think that Rick Rizzolo went to Jim at any time in a respectful manner when it was going to talk to him about money or rent or whatever his plans were. So I think that the seed pretty quickly was planted that was not going to be a healthy relationship.
And here you have this guy who's right next door running a mechanic shop with cars in the parking lot, and probably Rizzolo wanted to expand his business, maybe knock down barriers, shop and create more parking, or maybe expand the building. And Buffalo Jim was just standing in his way. What makes the Crazy Horse 2 legendary is not just the celebrities and the politicians that walked into this place. I mean, we had actors like Brad Pitt, we had Mike Tyson. I mean, everyone who was anyone at the time visited the Crazy Horse 2. But it wasn't the celebrity status and the clientele that made the Crazy Horse 2 so famous. It was actually the dark side of the Crazy Horse 2, because there was a lot of reports of clients and patrons of the strip club getting badly hurt and beat up by some of the employees at the Crazy Horse 2, right?
What Jim has said in interviews, Jim Barrier, and what has come out is that they weren't just doing that. What they were doing is they were singling out clients, and they were going to overcharge them ridiculous amounts of money. They're just going to lay $5,000 on somebody's credit card, and if the person complains, they're basically going to beat that person to within an inch of their life.
Back to Bill Anderson.
In this area right here, Jim Barrier would come to work in the morning and open up this door right here and find bodies beaten half to death laying right out here on the sidewalk in front of his area here.
There were reports of customers getting beat and robbed. I mean, from 2001 to 2003, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department was called to the Crazy Horse 2 more than 700 times. I mean, I don't know if that's normal for most strip clubs, but it just kind of shows you that if you, like you said, if you complain about your credit card bill, you might have some hurting.
Right. And those 700 calls, no one at the club had ever been arrested. So it leads to the possibility or the idea that either they were protected, somebody was looking out for them.
And right out back here, this area is where the owner of the Crazy Horse 2 was once witnessed shooting a dog out his back door here, just pulling a gun and killing a dog for no reason. This area right here, back there, was a man that was beaten to death with a baseball bat by the owner of this building here. The security would beat people half to death in this area too. One man became a paraplegic all because he argued over an $80 credit card bill that he said was padded a bit by the Crazy Horse 2, and he was taken back here and pretty much unrecognizable by the end of his beating, and he was paralyzed from the neck down.
Yeah, you're talking about Kirk Henry, which this incident happened on September 20th of 2001. And this changed things, which is people had been getting beat up, but this guy was paralyzed and he had a family. And according to his account, that he walked in there and basically they ran a scam on him. And as soon as he questioned his bill, they take him out back and they're beating this guy. And I think he described it as somebody basically twisted his neck so hard, he heard a pop and he could no longer feel his legs. And these bouncers, they just left him out there completely paralyzed. And this incident really got the attention. Jim talked about coming into work in the morning and finding people laying behind the Crazy Horse 2 bloodied up. Him calling for the police or an ambulance, that was something he was experiencing. So he's seeing all this. And he's talking to people. He knew people that worked inside the club. So he's getting information on what was going on inside there. So, I mean, this is just a man who believes in justice and doing the right thing and that people should be held accountable. And he's witnessing this stuff day in and day out. I can't even imagine the anger and frustration that Jim had. And essentially nobody was doing anything about this.
Well, I think what's really interesting about this Kirk Henry thing, that Buffalo Jim says that he was the one that saw Kirk Henry out in the parking lot. And if he hadn't taken photos of that incident, that maybe nothing would have happened. Maybe Kirk Henry wouldn't be found. This feud between Jim and Rick Rizzolo has been going on since the 90s. And at one point, Rick Rizzolo tried to buy Buffalo out, and Buffalo Jim just refused.
The interviews that Jim had given and talked about that meeting with Rick Rizzolo was it happened at Jim's place and he had his brother there and Rick brought another guy with him, and that Jim said he needed $1.2 million, at least according to his recollection of the events, and that Rick Rizzolo wanted to give him very little money. Jim wouldn't budge.
Jim wanted $1 per square foot, which is $10,000 a month for 10 years, which is basically $1.2 million.
And so then the meeting ended, according to Jim, with Rick Rizzolo putting his cigarette out on Jim's floor and just walking out. So with that, the battle lines had been drawn. And this feud would go on until Jim's death. And it was very heated and very contentious. And Jim began providing information to law enforcement about what he was observing and what he was being told about what was going on inside the Crazy Horse 2.
It sucks because we don't have a lot of recording of Buffalo Jim, but there are a lot of good quotes from reports from the Las Vegas Review-Journal that really paint a picture of who this guy was and how intense this feud was between Buffalo Jim and Rick Rizzolo. Buffalo Jim strikes me as a guy that he's the kind of guy that will remember a date, I mean, to the T. He probably could tell you the time of day that something happened. He had that kind of memory. And he talked to the reporter from the Las Vegas Review about the first time he learned about Rick Rizzolo, when Rick Rizzolo moved in. And he said, it was February 1st, 1984. Like he remembers it like it was yesterday. And he says, I've been here. I've seen it all, bro. Business isn't 1/10 of what it used to be over there. The parking lot isn't half as full as it was 5 years ago. That is a fact. And so you can see that right from the beginning. I mean, he clearly remembers this day when he first met this guy. And he just talks about all these people that would come in to the strip club and all the things that he was seeing and how the customers were being treated.
I think had he not been collecting evidence and documenting all this, I think a lot of this could have been brushed under the rug.
I mean, you could start seeing this picture of Buffalo Jim was not just an annoying tenant next door. He was a real problem for Rick Rizzolo. Jim was the guy constantly calling reporters. He was calling the FBI. He was constantly on Rizzolo's tail. And guess what? I mean, that ultimately led to the FBI looking into possible racketeering charges. But that raid at the Crazy Horse 2, that must have been pretty spectacular to see because, you know, it's 5 a.m., but this is a 24-hour strip club, right? At 5 a.m., I don't know, I would imagine that it was still bumping. And all of a sudden, 80 to 100 law enforcement officers just armed to the teeth, they just bust in there. I would imagine everybody's like screaming and it must have been mad chaos.
According to the one FBI agent, the employees at the Crazy Horse 2 acted as if they knew they were coming. According to the search warrant, apparently the judge's comment was that you're going to take everything out of this club except for the carpeting. And so they were very thorough. And one of the things they did, which is a very disturbing thought, but they took a black light to that club and they were looking for human liquids, things coming from humans. And apparently, according to the one report from an FBI agent, on one seat inside the club, they found 9 separate semen samples on that one seat.
Oh, that's disgusting.
But in the end, basically, only one person went to jail. That was Rick Rizzolo. And everyone else basically walked with a slap on the wrist. And after a 10-year investigation and all the things that went on there and all the people that were hurt, Jim wasn't staying in the dark. He wasn't just feeding information and keeping quiet. Here's a picture in the newspaper of Jim walking behind him proudly as if he's the one that arrested him. So the fact that Jim's role in Rick Rizzolo's downward fall and demise was very obvious to everyone. And Jim wanted it to be that way. So that feud was out there. It was not a secret. Everybody knew it. And Jim was absolutely throwing it in Rick's face.
He was quoted in the newspaper saying that, "I've been yelling from the rooftop since February 1984. Buffalo Jim never forgets." And this must have been a huge victory for him, right? After all these years fighting with, I mean, this David and Goliath type of story, right? Like this little auto mechanic fighting against a guy who owns not only one of the most famous strip clubs in the world, but has so many ties to the mafia. I mean, that's pretty ballsy, don't you think?
I do.
John, I mean, when we first encountered the story, when we started reading about this case, I think both you and I pretty much dismissed any foul play because, you know, sometimes the simplest explanation is the answer, right? And here you have this middle-aged man that died of natural causes in a hotel room. Initially, it just didn't seem to resonate with us. But, you know, after looking at all the details of this case, which we have been researching this case for months now, I don't know, man. Like, it seems a little suspicious considering everything that was going on. You know, a lot of this doesn't make sense to me. I have a hard time believing that Buffalo Jim was in that motel room alone. Or was he? Or was there someone with him? Why was he with his pants down? Why was there white powdery substance all over his beard and shirts? There's so many questions.
My dad was not using drugs. My dad was very open about drugs to us daughters because he tried everything. And he had done cocaine in the past and he wasn't very proud of that. But it was just the environment he was in, the people he hung out with. But I know for a fact that my dad was not a drug user 10 years leading up to his death. And the reason why I say that is because my dad was open to me about that. I thought to myself, because my dad had said if anything were to happen to him, it would be made to look like a drug overdose.
We just opened up a can of worms here. What do we have coming up for the rest of the season?
Your line must be tapped. Buffalo says, "What, my phone?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Somebody must have listened to us." I said, I haven't ever said this to any other people.
So I go back to the dressing room, and when The older strippers came up to me. Her name was Cherry, and Cherry's like, Buffalo is here. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit with him. He's going to like probably pass out, and then you're going to rob him.
When his shop was broken into, someone must have taken a pill bottle, and that's why there was a pill bottle at the scene. They did that to stage a setup.
All right, so that was it. That's the season premiere of Criminal Conduct Season 5. If you want to listen to the rest of the episodes, make sure to hop over onto the Criminal Conduct feed and press subscribe, and you'll get the episodes week by week. But if you are impatient, you could listen to all the episodes right now on Patreon or Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts. Talk to you next week.
These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7. Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day.
We have a serial killer at large.
Never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
Creative